Hello, hello. Welcome. My name is Marian Levine, and I will be your host for this hour. Today's topic is Love Amplified, build a deeper connection with your romantic partner. Now, if you're new to my circle, you've never heard of me, I'm going to introduce myself in a second, but I want to tell you a few ways to make the most out of our time together. So I will be giving you tons of information, and I don't want to overwhelm you. So before we dive in, I want to make sure that you keep in mind that in order to make the most out of everything I'm going to teach you today, I want you to pick one thing to take and actively apply. So there's going to be things that maybe you've never heard of, or maybe you have, but it won't be useful to you unless you make a challenge to yourself to go out and try it out. So pick one or two things that seem doable to you and apply them to your relationships. Now, it doesn't have to be your romantic relationship if you're not in one, or if you're not ready to. You can be a friendship, it can be a work relationship. All of these things apply to all relationships, but I am catering this to people in romantic relationships because that is my jam. So just make that a point as you're thinking about everything that I'm telling you today, and just try it out. And that is how you will see actual results and change in your life. So, with that said, let's dive in. If you don't already know, I am Maria Levine. I am a relationship coach. And what that means is that I give you the tools, the tips, the strategies, the guidance to help you create a deeply connected romance, a deeply fulfilling romance, a romance that can withstand conflict, a romance that will last, a romance that looks and is tailored to the kind of relationship you actually want to have, instead of settling for one that you're only kind of like okay with, or jumping from relationship to relationship, trying to look for the perfect one out there. The perfect relationship is one that we create, not one that we magically find. So I teach you that the way we create relationships that we're happy being in is by what we tolerate, what we ask for, and then the energy we bring. So those are just, simplified versions of what I actually teach, but at the root of it all, it comes down to how we show up in the relationship, what we do, what we don't do. I teach that it only takes one person to improve the relationship, and I teach you how to be that one person. Now, that doesn't mean that a partner doesn't also do their half, but I teach you how to guide, how to lead, how to set the environment for that cultivation of the relationship that you want. I have a 3 month oh, sorry, one second. Can you I have a 3 month program that teaches you how to be that person. It's called Reignite Your Relationship. And we meet once a week, and I walk you through everything you need to know and have to build that relationship. You want to make sure you're on my email list because you will have access to the replay of this, any notes that I have to give you as well, any additional, resources, and you will also get weekly tips, tools, and strategies, and you will learn more about my program and what it means to work with a coach. So that's my little intro about my business and what I'm here to do. Everything that we will learn today is part of what I teach you in this program, except that we do it deep, we do it deep dive. We do it specifically tailored to where you're at and what you need. Some of the things you're going to need to spend more time on, some of these things you're going to already know. So it's all tailored specifically to you. A little bit about me and my personal journey. Um, I used to think that I was at the mercy of those around me in order to have love and connection. So what that means is I was in a relationship where I only kind of just hoped and prayed that my partner would be more loving, more affectionate, more willing to connect with me, because I didn't know what I could do. I felt helpless to change it. And so I just kind of waited and felt, just like I had to settle. I didn't know how to ask to be treated well, how to ask to be treated differently. I had no willingness or ability to have conflict, to fight, and because I didn't know how to resolve them. So I didn't think they were worth having. I used to push things under the rug until they got too big. And so I really needed to develop all of the tools that I'm going to teach you today. And I eventually learned and mastered them. And now I have a healthy and thriving romance. And I teach you how to create that for yourself as well. So there's this kind of belief in the world that relationships just kind of either work or they don't. And I know that we work them. So this is all about how and what that looks like. Yeah, so let's just go ahead and dive right in. So we are trying to create love and connection, right? That's the whole point of today. And so before we even know how to do that, we have to clear out what's in the way of us having love and connection or deeper love and connection. And so I like to think of it like clouds covering the sun, right? The sun is the potential, the love that is available to you, and the clouds is just what's currently in the way of us being able to enjoy that. So we can weather the storm through the clouds and ride it out until it passes by mastering the skills that I call the clouds skills. With that, we will then invite joy, connection, and intimacy with ease because there isn't things in our way to them. Then once we part those clouds, we cultivate that connection and then we learn how to maintain it because once we have it, we have to learn how to keep it. So all of that is something that are things that we're going to get into today. So the skills that I'm going to talk to you about is here. I'm not going to go through them because I'm about to go into them, but I just want you to know what they are. The only one that I don't talk about here is resolving conflict because I have an entirely different webinar for just conflict because that is, a whole thing in and of itself. These are all could be a whole thing in and of themselves, but I do just kind of briefly touch on all of them today. So if there's any of these that are like, oh, that area I'm particularly, weak in or could use a lot more attention in, I want you to pay extra attention and then reach out to me and let me know because I can then create an entirely separate webinar that will focus on that more and more in more detail. So if you want that, if you need that, I would be happy to do that at your request. All right. So before we do any learning, I want you to ask yourself, do you believe that you create your feelings? You create your emotions? And then if you do believe that you create your emotions, do you know how to create the emotions that you want for your life? All right. So the reason why I have us start here is because we do. For the record, we do create our emotions, but we have to believe that we do. We have to see that we do. And then we have to see and believe that it is possible for us to generate the emotions that we want for our lives. So I'll give you an example. I create the emotion of connection. And I'm not going to go into this in a minute, but just briefly, I create the emotion of connection by how I choose to think about the person that I'm with. If I think, oh my God, I love them so much, they're so sweet, I'm going to be with them forever, I can't wait to spend my life with them, I'm probably going to feel pretty close to them. Versus when I focus all of my attention on how awful they are and how negative they are and how they don't love me, and that then those thoughts then create distance from them. Now you might say to me, yeah, but all those thoughts are true. And we can explore why it feels that way. But my point is that we get to focus on certain things that will then generate emotions for us. We get to decide how we see things based on our perspective, and then that dictates how we then feel. So that is a little introduction into how this works. So I just want you to ask yourself, where do you stand on this point? And if you're like, sorry, Maria, I don't see it, I don't even believe with this initial premise, I want you to reach out to me because this is where we would start. This is where our work would begin. But if you're like, you know what, I see it, I'm sold, we can continue, then, we're already, on step one. So both love and connection are feelings that we get to experience for ourselves. Now, other people don't create this for us. We feel love and connected by the thoughts that we choose to think. So the reason why I know this is fact is because we can feel connected to people that we have never met. Now, how would that be possible? If connection required them to be in the room with us or to do certain things for us, then we wouldn't be able to feel connection with people that I've never met or people that have passed. But because we can still feel lots of love and lots of connection for strangers on the internet, for people, that we never talk to anymore, we know that that emotion is generated based on a simple sentence in our mind or a couple of paragraphs about how we choose to think about the person. So ultimately, we get to create our experience of the world based on how we choose to think. All right. So we need to know what the thoughts and beliefs currently are that are not love and connection, right? We're choosing to think something that is taking us away from love and connection. So we first need to uncover, what are those thoughts? Do we like those thoughts? Is there truth to these thoughts? We have to explore, untangle all of the thoughts first. And then we can decide, how do we actually want to think? What do we actually want to do about these thoughts? And then choose with intention how we want to think about the person that we want to feel closer to. And invite maybe a balance of more positive thoughts or more loving thoughts. All right. So that's how this process will work. So first we need to know what's in our way. Why is it that we're choosing? What is currently preventing us from choosing to feel connected? Now, the reason that it's important for us to phrase it like this, what is currently preventing me from choosing connection, is because we really need to acknowledge to ourselves that we are choosing to feel disconnected. Now, that's okay, right? We don't have to feel connected all the time if we don't want to. There's probably a very good reason why you're choosing to feel disconnected. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't feel disconnected, but you just want to know what those reasons are. And you want to do it in a way that acknowledges your agency in that role, your place in making that decision. Now, at this point, you might not have felt like you chose them. It might feel like they were just there and you just kind of defaulted. And that's okay. You still chose them. You just did it not very consciously. So we're going to change that by looking at those thoughts and seeing how we can be more conscious about it. So this is a journal exercise. You can do this with a friend. You can talk it out loud, however it'll help you. But just take a moment, and I will be sending this out in the email. Take a moment to ask yourself, write down all of the thoughts right now that are preventing you from feeling connected. All right. So that's your first exercise. Now, the second question is, how would I want things to go in my ideal world? So there's an image that you have in your mind of how things would look if you felt connection. It's probably a lot of, well, they would be different. Well, they wouldn't do this. Well, they would do this instead. Okay. I want you to write that down. What does that look like? Get really specific and really imaginative of, like, when things look like this, then I will feel connection. Okay. Once you have done that, I want you to think about the emotions that you would be experiencing if that reality were true. So you're in this place where they're doing everything you think they should be doing now. Now, how are you feeling? Obviously connected, right? But how else are you? But now, how else are you feeling? And how else are you thinking? So if they're doing, let's say, I want my partner to, you know, buy me more gifts. And if they brought me more gifts, then I would be feeling so connected and so loved. I would also be thinking something like, oh my God, they appreciate me so much. Look how considerate they're being, right? And so those thoughts are thoughts that we will be aiming for. Those are kind of like the goal thoughts that we will be trying to. Now, I want to pause and say, we're not going to be delusional, right? We're not going to start to believe something that they just aren't capable of. But for example, if we want them to be more considerate, and we think right now that giving us gifts is considerate, then our future work is going to be to try to find ways in which they are being considerate that we're just not seeing. Or our work could be to start to request ways in which we want to be loved that we're not currently experiencing. So we need to know what we value in order to know what direction to go in, what to ask for, right? What to look for. All of this is just information that we really want to know about ourselves and the way we think and the way we choose to be loved. So you want to know, what would you be thinking and how would you be feeling if you had all the things in your ideal world? And then the last question is, what am I thinking right now instead? So this is kind of very similar to the first question, but you just want to make sure that you kind of compare it to where you want to be and what's missing. So where you currently are, where you currently where you want to be, and then we're going to fill in that gap. All right. So I have like one of the thoughts, like personally, that prevents me from feeling connected is something like, they're not there for me. Okay. That's a thought. They're not there for me. Now, it feels like an observation. Like I'm just making an observation. Yep, they're not. I'm looking around, they're not there for me. Or I'm looking right at them and they're not there for me. And so my job is to really explore that thought and look at that thought and ask, what does that thought mean? And what would them being there for me look like? Now, once we have that, we can decide what to do about it, right? Do I request for them to be different? Do I, you know, do I choose to let that go because it's, an unrealistic expectation? We're going to get more into that, but right now we're just in the diagnosing phase. We're just bringing awareness to where we currently are. That was a lot, so I hope that made sense. Again, this is all work we do, week by week together if we were to work together, but I'm introducing you to the ideas so you just have a general sense of what the work would look like. So if you have any questions, write them down and do not hesitate to reach out. All right. Why it's not your partner's fault. So when we do this exercise, I kind of mentioned this earlier, but we're going to start to think, if my partner would change, if they didn't do this, or if they started doing that, then things would be better, right? So my example was my partner isn't there for me. So if I'm like, well, if my partner asked me more questions and became more interested and gave me more, intimate details about their world, then we would be more connected, right? So the reason why this isn't the most beneficial way to go about this is because it makes us a victim. It keeps us in this helpless place. And therefore, it blinds us to what we can do. So we don't have an option when we're just looking at our partner and wanting them to be different. Kind of like what I said about me at the beginning, where I guess I'm just hopeless to what my partner is willing to do and say to me. And I'm just here waiting on my hands for someone to treat me well, right? Yes, that is an option, but then I'll just be waiting all day. Instead, right? Like I said, my first love, he wasn't very nice to me. He wasn't particularly affectionate. Now, I could have spent, and I did, spent a lot of time focused on them. But when we want to start shifting and changing about the approach, is to take responsibility for what we're doing, what we're tolerating, what we're not asking for, what we're not communicating, right? There is something on our half. So to go back to my example, when my partner wasn't kind to me, when they would say things that were a little derisive towards me, I took it. I was just quiet. I thought I deserved it. I thought that's just, the way he wants to be towards me. And there was nothing I could do about it. But really, I always had the option, not just to leave, but to say, hey, don't speak to me that way. Or why, or, to comment on it, to set a boundary, to do something about the situation where I communicated that this wasn't acceptable for me. So we always have half of the responsibility in a dynamic. And our focus starts to shift into what are we doing and how can we change the dynamic instead of dwelling on them and what they're not doing and how they're not measuring up. All right. Now, once our half of the equation is taken care of fully, then we can start to invite our partner and ask them to do their half and all of that work, all of that fun stuff. But our initial starting point is us and how we show up, because that's what we have control over. Now, next we talk about communication, right? Because we have to be able to talk to our partners and let them know how we're feeling. So it's not just about, it's not just about what we say. It's always about how we're saying it, the way that we speak, the way that we fight, the way that we ask questions. It all matters. And the way that we do something is specifically focused on the energy that we bring. So the energy that we bring is the feelings that we are experiencing in the situation. And that energy influences the reaction that we get from our partner, which then creates the dynamic that we're ultimately in. So we try to control other people and we try to get them to be different because we want to feel good. We want a different interaction. But really, what we need to be doing is focusing in on how we want to feel and how we want to show up. So I'll give you an example. My partner shows up and they're in a bad mood and they say an offhanded comment like, "Why don't you ever clean?" Now, that could be very triggering for me. I know, but specifically for a lot of us, it's like we jump into a defensive mode and we start to fight and we start to say, "How could you say that? What about what you do? You never clean, you never do this," whatever. And so now we're in a fight and now we are butting heads. Now, the energy that I brought to the situation was one of anger, of frustration, of defensiveness, right? And now we're spiraling to a negative place, which is fine. That, you know, that is an option. Now, the alternative to this is my partner shows up, they're in a bad mood, and they say, "Why don't you ever clean?" And I have an option. I just get to recognize in that moment, I have a choice. I could continue the pattern and be defensive and blah, blah, blah. Or I could pause, I could take a breath, I could register that I'm frustrated, and I could decide to say something like, "It sounds like you're in a bit of a negative space right now. Maybe we should talk about this when you're feeling a little calmer." Or, "That's so interesting that you think that. I can think of a lot of examples when I do clean. Why are you saying that?" Right? And I could be calm. I could just be genuinely curious. I could just be neutral. And that will take our conversation in a very different direction than we would have if we stayed in this negative spiral. And then over time, that accumulates to more and more positive interactions. Okay. So, how we show up is crucial to this exchange. So, we need to start to think and ask ourselves, if we want more connection, how do we need to feel and how do we need to think? Right. So, in that example, I would need to feel calm. I would need to feel neutral. I would need to feel curious, understanding, patient, and I would need to think, right? Fighting won't get us anywhere. I wonder what's going on for him, right? And these are thoughts that I get to choose. And now maybe in the background, there's a little bit of frustration and irritation and blah, 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 and it's still there, but we don't have to act on it. And that is where we get to activate our agency and decide how the emotions that will run our lives. So that's the magic. Now, learning how to do this is the skill that I teach you to do. All right. So communication is a very important thing. So how we say what we say is what we just talked about. Now, the other important part of communication is listening and how to listen in a way that is productive. So there's a difference between hearing and listening, right? And so the one of the skills that I teach you and one of the shifts that we make is how to listen to understand. Okay. Which means that instead of our goal being to be right or to be heard, our goal starts to be to want to hear your person, to want to understand them first. And then we worry about being understood second. That's all we're doing. We're not giving up on being understood, but we are just changing the priorities. So, this skill is how to hear what they're saying without reacting to it while staying open and staying neutral. And the way that we do this is by understanding that our interpretations of what they're saying is not fact. So my boyfriend says, "You don't clean," And my interpretation of that could be, they're such a jerk. They don't appreciate me. They are so inconsiderate of me. Okay, that's one option. Now, another option could be just to hear that as it is. Okay, well, where is that right? Where is what they're, why is it that they're saying that? Right? Are they just outright lying, or is there any semblance of truth to that? And then if you can see it, like, okay, maybe in this last month I've been a little preoccupied. And I'm sure he doesn't mean ever, but it does seem like it's been a while since I've made a point to do some chores. And in that instant, you kind of see, like, okay, I can kind of understand. And that's all you need. You don't have to agree. You don't have to be like, you know what, you're right, I never do. You just have to be like, I understand where you're coming from. So you hear them, you try to actively understand by dropping your defenses and paying attention, being present. And then what you do is you repeat it back to them and you say, okay, let me make sure I'm understanding you right. This is what I heard. And then you repeat it. You feel like I don't clean. It's probably because in the past few months or in the past month, I've been very preoccupied with work. I haven't had a lot of time to prioritize it. Is that what you're referring to? Right? And that will bring everybody's defenses down. And then you can have an actual conversation. Right? But it's important that your person feels understood, feels heard. And that is a beautiful skill that will save you so many arguments. Another way to say it is to acknowledge that your interpretation isn't the only interpretation. So you could say, this could be wrong, but the way I'm hearing you is that you don't see the times that I do clean, right? That is still you acknowledging that there's a part of you that knows that there's more than one way to see this. And you're just telling them that you can't see past this particular interpretation, but you're open to seeing past it. This is how my brain wants to interpret it. This is a great kind of in-between point if you're not able to get to the whole entire place. Now, eventually, once we've done the work, once we know where our half is, and we're ready to invite our partner to do their half. So let's say I've been feeling very disconnected to my partner, and it has resulted in us not being very intimate and not having date nights and not spending quality time together. Right? We've started to prioritize other things ahead of the relationship. And I realized this, and I say, you know what? I would like this to change. I am going to ask if we can have date nights once a week. All right. Oh, this is the request that I want to make in order to create more connection. So first, before we even ask for this, we have to know that there are many ways to make ourselves happy, and we are not dependent on an outside factor in order to be happy. Now, this is important because if we are dependent on this working out in order for us to be happy, we are again giving our agency away and being victims and feeling helpless to an outside force. So we have to be okay with us not getting this request or this not working out, and have the certainty and the confidence that we will find a way to be happy no matter what. So this is a very important starting point. Okay. Now, we have to know, why do we want it? All right. So if this is a request, I think, right, because I set the example, is fairly reasonable. But if the request is a little more challenging, like maybe I want my partner to take me dancing, but my partner doesn't like to dance, right? Maybe something more, a little bit, that might be a little bit more difficult. We have to know, why is it that we want it? What are we trying to get out of it? And what do we think we're going to feel when we get it? So I imagine me and my partner dancing, and oh my God, it's so exciting, and it's so fun, and it's so important to me. And we have to know that. We have to know that it's important to us. But it also has to be okay if they say no, and we have to know that we can still get fun and enjoyment and whatever in other ways. It doesn't have to look like this. So we have to know, what is the emotion that we're trying to feel so that we know that there are many ways to get that emotion, not just by this particular request. Same thing with the date night example. If they can't, for some reason, be open to date nights once a week, and my desire is to feel more connected, okay, there might be other ways for me to receive what I'm trying to look for. And if this is request is a no, then I can stay open to other possibilities. So go into that with that energy that you can still receive what you're looking for regardless of this request. But for the sake of it, we want to ask for it because we want it. And so we get to show up how we want to. So we decide ahead of time, how do I want to request this? Right? Do I want to be very serious? Do I want to be very light, very casual? Like what kind of emotions do I want to have while I'm making this request? Now, if this is a very important request, we want to make sure we bring an air of severity to it. All of this is work that we do ahead of time to prepare. And then we have a backup plan, like I said. So if they can't take us dancing, then we either choose to go dancing with someone else or like a friend, right? We don't want to go have an affair, but we choose to, go have a dance party with a friend. Maybe we take ourselves dancing. Maybe we dance in the living room. Maybe we take care of that need this way. And then how can we brainstorm? How can we have fun in a way that is enjoyable to both of us? All right. So that would be the backup plan. All right. Now, boundaries have been in the media for a while, so most of us have an idea of what they are. But so I won't go into it too much. But if you have a tendency to feel bitter or resentful in your relationships, there's a likelihood that you have these people pleasing tendencies. So boundaries and people pleasing kind of go hand in hand oftentimes because people pleasers have trouble saying no, therefore speaking up for what they want, and then they end up doing things that they don't actually want to be doing and not communicating when people are crossing their boundaries like I used to do. So for example, my ex-boyfriend, he would say things to me that were a little derisive. I didn't know how to say I don't tolerate that, so I let him do it, and that was a boundary that I was allowing him to cross, and then feeling angry and bitter because of something that I wasn't communicating. So the reason why we have such difficulty saying no and we put other people ahead of ourselves is because we don't believe very healthy things about ourselves. So we have to believe that I deserve to speak up for me, that I am good enough to have what I want, that it's safe to say no. Growing up, a lot of us maybe weren't taught that it's okay, that nothing's going to happen, that people aren't going to leave just because you say no. No, boundaries are going to dictate your actions. So if somebody does something that you don't like, it's not then we're over, it's breaking up. It could be, but it's not necessarily. It could be something like, I'm going to remove myself from the situation, or I'm going to leave and come back once things are calm, or I'm going to choose to, if you come barging into my house, I'm going to change the locks, right? But I'm going to do something. You can continue your behavior, but I'm going to take actions to protect myself from it. And that's what we need to set and dictate. And if boundaries are hard for you, then you probably have some fractured relationships, and this is going to be where we'll spend a lot of our time together. Oh, that is so much information, guys. I'm so sorry to overwhelm you. I promise I only have a couple of more things. So I said earlier that love and connection are emotions and feelings, but they're also verbs. They are actual literal things that we do and that we show people. And so we have to treat them as actions that we must take deliberately. So I'm sure we've all heard of love languages by now. We can touch, we can say things, we can do things, we can give things, we can spend time with people. Those tend to be the ways that we express and receive love. And we experience connection by showing people that we prioritize them. We make time to be with them. We make time to check on them, to talk to them, to be with them, to show up to them, to travel to them, right? We make them priorities. And so that's how we show people that we love, and we show people connection. So we have to, it always starts with our thoughts. It's always going to come down to how we thought. So our ability to prioritize our relationships comes with how we're thinking. So we are always wired to be negative. That's our human brain at its best. So we have to be in charge of showing our brains all the good things in the relationship and in our lives. This is why gratitude works so well, because we are purposely shifting our brain's natural tendency to only see what's going wrong. So you want to notice when your mind is offering you everything that's wrong in your relationship, which it will tend to do. And that's good information, right? Don't just ignore it. It's just a signal. It's just giving you information of potential things that could be worked on. But you want to balance that by also thinking about all the things that are right and all the things that are good, and choosing loving thoughts that highlight your partner's greatness on purpose. This is a practice that we get into so that over time we don't let negative bias run our relationship. So this the way that we prioritize the people in our lives, especially a romantic partner, is believing and living in the reality that this matters, right? I like a thought. These are just my personal thoughts. You don't have to believe them, but I like to believe that when my partner is in turmoil, meaning they're stressed or they're in a bad place, everything stops. Like I focus on them. I put other things aside because they need me. I always want to be there for them when that's the case. Right? I always make time to check in. Hey, how's your day? Hey, how are you feeling? How was your day? What's going on with you? Right? I always want to know what's going on in their world outside of me. I'm always interested and curious and fascinated and excited. And those are things that I have to cultivate on purpose because life is very consuming and there are kids and taxes and work and so many things can get ahead of it. So I know it feels not romantic to feel like you have to do this on purpose, but it is the work that matters, and it's natural and it's human. And ultimately, we want to do this because we want the results of being in love and feeling connected. And so some ideas to make sure that you're creating a habit is that you have weekly date nights or bi-weekly date nights where you put the screens away and you talk. Maybe you play games, you look at each other, you touch, you talk about your past, right? You connect, you spend quality time. I am personally a big proponent of monthly check-ins. So once a month, you do kind of like a big talk where you ask each other what's going great, what can be improved. And I actually created a very specific guide for this. So I actually use this every month with my partner where there's a list of questions where you go through and you just, you know, give your where you've been at and what could be better and all that fun stuff. And then of course, every day you want to make sure you're talking, you're connecting. You want to show them your genuine interest because that is all part of this maintenance. Now, it's going to look different for everybody, but this is just in general best practices. So that's what I have for you. Like I said, I gave you a lot. So do choose a few things to really start to implement, or choose a few things to ask me more about so we can dive deeper. You can send me an email at, I should have put it on here, maria.levine.coaching@gmail.com. Dot like a period, Maria period, Levine period. You can also reach me on my website at Maria Levine. Levine is spelled Lavin. Maria Levine Coaching at gmail. I mean, MariaLevineCoaching.com. Anyway, there are many ways to reach out to me. Um, if you need help diving deeper into this at no cost to you, I'm here for you. So, if you want to know a little bit about my program, it's called, like I said, Reignite Your Relationship. We meet every week for 3 months over Zoom. I will be your mentor, your teacher, your coach. I show you how to yield your power of influence that I taught you today. My my program is specific to your situation and your relationships needs. Um, and by that end, you will have the relationship or the tools to create the relationship that you want and you deserve. including everything that we talked about today and more. So go ahead and make sure you join my email list so you can receive those weekly emails and the replay to this and the notes. You will also get my monthly check-in guide. That's the first thing you will receive, where you will get that list of questions so you can go to your partner and say, hey, how do you feel like we're doing? You can also get, I think I said this, weekly tips, tools, and strategies, and then you can just reply to any email at any point and it will go straight to me and we can talk about anything that you're struggling with. That's a little bit of what the monthly check-in looks like that you'll be receiving. And yeah, that's everything I have. I hope I didn't overwhelm you. I've said this already, but reach out to me with any questions, anything you want a clarification on, or anything that you thought could take that you want to know more about. I can create a whole other webinar just on some of the things in this. So let me know. Thank you so much for watching and for being here, and hope to hear from you soon.